Shimizu Junko is somewhat of an enigma in Silent Hill F. In a game full of strange creatures and people wearing fox masks, she alone wears the mask of a kite. Despite being Hinako's beloved older sister, she seems to tempt her into a fate that she doesn't want and is actively fighting against. And for some reason, we never see her face. But who is Junko? What is her purpose in Silent Hill F? And what is it that she's truly after? The game doesn't tell us a whole lot about her background. She's Hinako's older sister, and at some point before the events of the game, she moved out, marrying a member of the Kinuta family in an arranged marriage. Junko is described as being supportive of her younger sister, even as she constantly rebels against her parents, while at the same time being a perfect filial daughter towards them herself. As the game opens, we're introduced to both Hinako and Junko as the older sister arrives home for a visit. She finds Hinako sitting outside and reminiscing about when they were younger, and how Junko always looked out for her. This sets the stage for their relationship, and how we're supposed to view it. The scene cuts to Junko, standing there in her yukata, crossing her hands in front of her like a proper, refined, elegant woman. Yet, we never see her face. As a married woman, Junko is no longer her own person. But things are clearly strained between the sisters now, and before Junko can say anything, Hinako gives her a small bell. These bells are supposed to ward off evil. Junko hugs her, but the hug is not returned. The next time we see her, well, we don't see her, but it's after the town has been overrun by strange fog and flowers and fleshy creatures. First, we hear her voice as someone helps Hinako escape the fog monster with a ladder, but she's nowhere to be seen. Then, we see her walking ominously on the other side of some classroom windows at the school, warning Hinako that her friends will betray her, and they are ultimately unnecessary. Hinako will soon have to make a decision, and it's clear that Junko is urging her, for whatever reason, to rid herself of her friends. Her friends that she has come this far with. This is nothing like the woman we met at the start of the game, or how Hinako has described her beloved older sister. So why is she acting this way? In the Dark Shrine, Hinako is put through a series of trials, where she must decide whether to abandon her friends or not, and prove how much she's willing to give up in order to be the perfect bride for Foxmask. Although many may not notice it the first time around, we can see Junko standing off to the side, congratulating Hinako and Foxmask as they walk down the aisle towards their wedding. She is the only figure wearing a kite mask, while everyone else is wearing a fox mask. How curious. And when Hinako awakens from the Dark Shrine, she finally goes home to find Junko, wearing that same mask, standing inside. Her skin is pasty and grey, and covered in scars and wounds that almost makes her look to be decomposing. Almost like Hinako's view of getting married means the death of a woman. The bell that Hinako gave her is still in her belt, but her yukata is no longer the pale one from the opening cutscene. Now, it's dark. Hinako points out that something about her seems different, in the biggest, "Yeah, no shit, Sherlock," statement of the century. But Junko points out that she feels the same, and pulls a "no you," stating that it's actually Hinako who feels like someone else now. It's an odd conversation that gets even odder when Junko notes that Hinako is alive, and yet still lost. "I've already told you countless times. This will be the last time I repeat myself. You must decide your future." She reminds Hinako that only she can decide her fate, but she can't sit on it forever. She's running out of time and must make her decision soon. She then leaves Hinako with a rather odd statement. "If you were anyone else, your time would have run out long ago." By this point, Junko clearly has a much better understanding of what's going on than Hinako, and despite telling her that only she can decide her future, she is clearly pushing her towards one decision in particular. Junko appears again in the Dark Shrine to speak to Hinako, asking if she killed it. Is it gone? Again, on your first playthrough, this conversation might seem rather odd and not make a lot of sense, but the second time around it's much clearer. She's talking about Hinako's human self, and she's asking if Hinako's fox self has killed off her human half. She hasn't, and when Junko learns of this, she promises to keep it to herself just for today, but if she doesn't finish the job herself, then Junko will kill off her human half for her. Not just for Hinako's sake, but his sake as well. It should be no surprise to learn that she's speaking of Fox Mask. It would appear that Junko is working with, or for, Fox Mask. This is also probably a good point to talk about Junko's mask. It's that of a tobi, or kite bird. This mask is generally used in no or kyogen plays to portray a tengu. Interestingly, thanks to a passage in the Nihon Shoki that refers to a meteorite by the name Amano Kitsune, or Heavenly Fox, but uses the characters for tengu to spell this word, some people believe that long ago, tengu and kitsune were perhaps thought to be the same thing. Now, this mask in particular refers to a karasu tengu, creatures that are known to spirit people away. They're also thought to be somewhat lower in status in the yokai world, so seeing a woman wearing a karasu tengu mask, creatures known to abduct people, pushing her sister into a marriage with a man in a fox mask, who it would seem she's at least working with, if not for, should come as no surprise when you know the history behind these creatures. We see Junko again once Fox Hinako turns into Shiromuku, the perfect bride for Fox Mask, her face and all sense of identity gone. Now she is only his wife, an extension of him. Junko calls out the human Hinako for being rude and instructs Shiromuku to finally kill her. When human Hinako asks her why, Junko tells her that it's for her own good. But when human Hinako ends up at the Dark Shrine as well, Junko is surprised to see that she's somehow still alive. Hinako is devastated by what she sees as her sister's betrayal, working for the other side. How could she do such a thing? But when Junko asks her why does she think that she's here, she freaks out, taking more of Shu's red pills right in front of her. The sisters struggle, and Junko is left frozen, literally frozen in time, as human Hinako decides to smash up the shrine and the wedding altar, the thing she sees as the cause of all her problems. And this is the last we see of Junko, but playing through the game again and getting the various endings reveals even more about her true motives and what it is that she represents to Hinako. For example, when you run into Junko at the Shimizu household the second time around, the conversation plays out differently. This time, she straight out asks Hinako if she's ready to kill or be killed. She then urges her to choose death. She's not just being a weird internet edgelord, and this conversation is very telling on how Hinako feels about marriage. She asks Junko if everyone does this. Is everyone a killer? Did Junko also kill? To which she replies, of course, she killed everyone, all her family and friends. This is of course not literal. It's like the trials Hinako went through in order to marry Fox Mask in the Dark Shrine, where she was made to kill her friends in order to essentially kill off her old life and move forward as Fox Mask's new wife. Human Hinako remarks that she doesn't want to die. This is both literal and figurative, as we have now learnt that Hinako literally has two sides to her, and both now exist independent of each other. For Fox Hinako to become the perfect bride, she has to kill her human half off. The half that represents Hinako as a regular, independent person, with her own friends, interests, life, etc. Only by killing all that off can she be the perfect bride for her husband, someone who exists only to serve him. And that is exactly what Junko has been pushing her towards all this time. Junko is constantly described as being the perfect wife in 1960s Japan, and she's confirming she did the same. Killed off her old life so she could totally and entirely give herself to her new husband. In this case, not literally, but figuratively. She keeps pointing out, however, that Hinako is the only one who can decide her fate, and her decision comes at a great price if she is to survive. If she calmly accepts her demise, however, that price won't have to be paid. In the Fox's wedding ending, when human Hinako reaches the Dark Shrine once again, Junko is exasperated that she is still clinging to life. It's time you accepted your fate. Loop theory appears to be very real here, and it seems they have been through this before. The longer you cling to life, the more Hinako suffers. Junko insists that Shimizu Hinako no longer exists and tells this child to be gone. Again, it's fairly obvious what she means by this, but it's another nail in the coffin of Hinako's childhood and life before marriage. Now, none of that exists. The child is dead and shouldn't be here anymore because the woman who is getting married must forget her previous life and exist only for her husband, just like Junko. This is why everyone keeps referring to Hinako as being dead or a spirit, because this version of her should no longer exist once she gets married. But just like in the first ending, Hinako's old doll appears and takes Junko out of action. This doll is part of yet another layer of the story that I'll fully explore in another video. But to massively condense all that, there are basically two varying divine factions at war in Ebisugaoka. The Fox Spirit, or Inari-sama, and the Tsukumogami, which is represented by Hinako's old childhood doll. Tsukumogami are, in essence, old objects that have survived long enough to gain a soul or spirit. Why are they fighting? Well, the Tsukumogami faith used to be the predominant one in Ebisugaoka, until the Foxes took over, and sort of melded with this former faith to create a unique brand of fox worship that incorporates elements of the Tsukumogami. And the Fox clan keeps itself going by forcing the divine child, who is born once in a blue moon in the village, to marry the then head of the clan. This time around, Hinako is that divine child, and the Fox clan wants Kotoyuki, aka Fox Mask, to marry her. Why? Because they believe that if they don't, well, not just the clan, but the village itself will suffer. Literally. Because, as it turns out, there's a god here that's even older than the Fox and Tsukumogami religions. Throughout the game, you can pick up files that speak of the Yamata no Orochi, the 8-headed serpent that was defeated by Susanoo in Japanese mythology. Apparently, one of those heads ended up right here in Ebisugaoka and turned into a poisonous water dragon, and its rage has only been held in check by the Tsukumogami and Fox religions that built up over the years. In the Fox Wets Its Tail ending, where Hinako rejects her marriage, it's revealed that the town has to be evacuated because of volcanic activity. This is exactly what they feared would happen if the Yamata no Orochi head was no longer bound. And so, there's an extra element here behind Junko's motives. She isn't just trying to push her sister to marry and become the perfect wife, just like her. If we believe the stories, then she's also trying to save the entire village. And this is potentially why she calls human Hinako rude when Shiromuku grabs her. Human Hinako clinging to life is, in their eyes, dooming the village. All of this, of course, is simply the Junko we see on the other side, however. Regular human Junko genuinely appears to sympathize with her sister and her decision to not have others try to make her happy, but rather live her life for herself and make her own decisions. In one scene when you are going for the true ending, she even remarks that she doesn't think Hinako is wrong for wanting what she wants. And perhaps sometime soon that world might even come about. But it's not a world she can live in, even though she hopes Hinako can. This Junko fully accepts her role as a wife in an arranged marriage, but also supports Hinako and hopes that she can achieve her dreams that are of something different for her. In the end, the Junko we see wearing the mask represents Hinako's fears of marriage and her fears of losing her sense of self and identity upon marriage. But if we accept that the supernatural telling of Ebisugaoka is also real, and not just in Hinako's head, then she's also actively an agent working for the Fox clan, doing her best to get her sister to follow in her footsteps and be a good girl who gets married. Because that's what the Fox clan needs to keep the water god at bay. But what did you guys think of this one? Are there any other topics or characters from Silent Hill F that you'd like me to explore? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.